It's what you make it. If you don't do anything, nothing will happen. There is nothing to escape from. You have to create your own reality.
For decades, Dolph Lundgren has been the silent giant of Hollywood, the intimidating 6'5" Swede who rarely complains, never causes trouble, and always shows up to work harder than everyone around him. Fans know him as the stoic powerhouse from Rocky IV, Universal Soldier, and dozens of action classics. But what fans don't know is that behind Dolph's calm exterior lies a lifetime of stories he has kept buried, until now, because at 68, something changed. During a recent sit-down interview, Dolph, older, wiser, and shockingly unfiltered, finally broke his silence. For the first time in his career, he opened up about the 5 actors who made his life on set miserable. The ones he said he would never work with again, no matter the paycheck, and the names stunned everyone. Dolph didn't give vague hints. He didn't speak in riddles. He spoke plainly about the bullying, the ego wars, the sabotage behind the camera, and the one actor who nearly punched him during a scene that wasn't even scripted. He described another who treated the entire cast like peasants, and one megastar who tried to get Dolph fired simply because he was too tall and too popular. What shocked fans most was not the names themselves, but how long Dolph endured the disrespect and silence. He kept quiet while building his career, while raising his family, while surviving cancer, not wanting drama, not wanting attention. But now, at 68, Dolph revealed he has nothing left to fear, nothing left to prove, and no reason to protect the reputations of people who made his life hell. And once he started talking, he didn't hold back. For most of his career, Dolph Lundgren lived by one rule: keep your head down and do the work. He wasn't the type to gossip, complain, or point fingers. Growing up in Sweden, he learned early that discipline, humility, and silence were far more powerful than ego. Even when he became an international star after Rocky IV, Dolph resisted the Hollywood lifestyle. No scandals, no headlines, no feuds, or so fans thought. But as he approached his late 60s, something inside him shifted. Part of it was age. Part of it was surviving a serious battle with cancer that forced him to reevaluate everything in life. And part of it was the realization that he no longer needed to protect people who did not protect him. When you're young, he said, you let things go. You don't want to be difficult. But when you get older, you realize that some people deserve to be called out. And that's when the interviewer asked the question no one expected Dolph to answer honestly. Are there any actors you truly hated working with? The room fell silent. Even the crew held their breath. Dolph leaned back, crossed his arms, and stared at the floor for several seconds. It was the kind of pause that carried decades of memories, good and bad. He wasn't deciding whether to answer. He was deciding where to begin. When he finally looked up, his expression was calm but unfiltered. 5 actors, he said. 5 men who made my life absolutely miserable. He didn't smile. He didn't soften it. The truth had been locked away for years, and now he was ready to let it out. Dolph explained that the first clash happened early in his career, back when he was still new to Hollywood and vulnerable. He was working with a veteran actor who, instead of offering guidance, saw him as competition. This man would mock him on set, criticize his accent, and belittle him in front of the crew. Dolph never confronted him at the time, worried it would ruin his rising career. But the bitterness of that experience stayed with him. The second actor on Dolph's list was someone fans would never expect: a man with a polished public image. Behind the scenes, Dolph said, this actor had a temper that could flip a switch without warning. During one tense moment, he exploded over a minor mistake, screaming at Dolph so aggressively that several crew members stepped in. Dolph never forgot how the actor later pretended nothing happened, as if the outburst were normal. But the third name on Dolph's list was worse. This actor, one of the biggest action stars of the 90s, sabotaged Dolph behind the scenes. According to Dolph, this man demanded script rewrites to reduce Dolph's lines, refused to shoot scenes that made Dolph look strong, and even tried to get him removed from the project completely. It was jealousy, Dolph said. Pure jealousy. By the time Dolph reached his 4th story, the interviewer looked genuinely shocked. This time, the feud wasn't personal, it was physical. Dolph described an actor who insisted on realism during fight scenes, hitting harder than necessary and pushing Dolph beyond safety. One punch was so hard it left Dolph with a bruised rib. When Dolph confronted him later, the actor laughed and accused him of being soft. Dolph never forgot the disrespect. And then there was number 5, the final actor on his list, and the one Dolph reacted to with the deepest frustration. Unlike the others, this actor didn't insult him or hit him. Instead, he treated everyone beneath him like they didn't exist. Dolph recalled watching this man scream at assistants, dismiss stuntmen, and throw tantrums when things didn't go his way. He had no respect for anybody, Dolph said, and that's something I can't tolerate. Dolph Lundgren wasn't angry, he was relieved. For the first time in his life, he was finally free to speak without fear. These are the 5 actors Dolph Lundgren absolutely hated working with, and the truth behind each explosive feud will leave you speechless. Dolph Lundgren didn't reveal all 5 names immediately. He started with the one that hurt him the most, the very first person in Hollywood who made him feel small. For someone as physically imposing as Dolph, that wasn't easy. But emotional wounds don't care about size. He took a deep breath before saying the name. And when he finally did, the entire room reacted. This actor was a legend, someone older, respected, and widely admired for his contribution to action cinema. Fans would never suspect that he had a ruthless, territorial side. But for Dolph, their first encounter was devastating. It happened during Dolph's earliest years in Hollywood, when he still doubted himself. He had left Sweden, left his academic path, left a stable future in chemical engineering, all to chase a dream he wasn't sure he deserved. When he arrived on set with this senior actor, he expected mentorship or at least neutrality. What he got instead was hostility. From day one, he treated me like I didn't belong, Dolph recalled. The actor mocked his accent in front of the cast, called him the giant foreigner, and tried to convince the director that Dolph wasn't right for the role. Every time Dolph delivered a line, the actor would loudly comment, "Try it again. Maybe slower. Maybe simpler." The crew knew what was happening, but no one intervened. The actor held too much power. Dolph didn't want to cause trouble. He needed the job, so he pushed through the humiliation, hoping things would improve. They did in single quotes once. After Dolph completed a complicated stunt perfectly, the actor walked toward him and said, "Don't get too comfortable. One role doesn't make you a star." Dolph never responded, but that moment stayed with him. Decades later, during the interview, he admitted that this particular feud shaped how he approached Hollywood for the rest of his career. He learned early that not everyone wanted him to succeed. "What bothered me wasn't that he didn't like me," Dolph said. "It was that he wanted me to fail." But Dolph also revealed something the public never knew. Years later, when they crossed paths again at an industry event, the actor pretended as if nothing had ever happened. He shook Dolph's hand, smiled warmly, and asked how he'd been. "It was surreal," Dolph said. "He spent months tearing me down, and years later, suddenly he was friendly. Like none of it mattered." The interviewer asked if Dolph believed the actor regretted his behavior. "No," Dolph answered without hesitation. "Some people forget what they did. Others pretend to forget. Either way, the damage stays with you." But what made this first feud the most painful wasn't the bullying. It was how it affected Dolph internally. At a time when he was still developing confidence, still building his identity as an actor, this man's cruelty made him question everything. He admitted that there were nights he went home and wondered whether Hollywood was truly the place for him, whether he should quit and return to his academic career, whether he was strong enough not physically, but emotionally to withstand the pressure. But quitting wasn't in Dolph's blood. He stayed silent, worked harder than anyone else, and used the humiliation as fuel. Years later, when Rocky IV made him a superstar, people assumed it was his raw physical presence that carried him. But what really powered him was something far deeper: the determination to prove the first actor wrong. "That experience made me who I am," Dolph said. "It made me tougher. It made me focused. And it made me realize that talent isn't enough in this business. You need a thick skin too." The first actor on Dolph's list wasn't just someone he hated working with, he was the man who taught Dolph how cruel Hollywood could be. By the time Dolph Lundgren reached his late 30s, his reputation in Hollywood was sealed, disciplined, polite, and almost impossibly focused. Directors loved him, stunt teams trusted him, and actors, whether they admitted it or not, respected the man's intensity. But even the most disciplined personalities have limits, and for Dolph, one co-star pushed those limits far beyond breaking point. This tension erupted during the filming of a mid-90s action movie that paired Dolph with another rising name in the genre, an actor known for his method acting, but infamous behind the scenes for taking it too far. On paper, their pairing was perfect, two muscular leads bringing explosive power to a film that needed exactly that. In reality, their chemistry off-camera was so toxic that people on set still talk about it decades later. From the moment the cameras rolled, the actor's ego filled the space. He refused rehearsals, mocked Dolph's Swedish accent, and insisted on last-minute script changes that made him appear tougher, stronger, and smarter. Dolph brushed it off the first few times he'd dealt with difficult personalities before. But things escalated when the production reached its most intense stunt sequence. In this scene, Dolph's character was supposed to be struck across the face during a choreographed fight. Every professional stunt performer knows the rule: pull the punch. Never make real contact unless agreed upon. But this co-star went rogue. Instead of pulling the punch, he launched a full-force strike directly at Dolph's jaw, hard enough that people watching heard the crack. Dolph staggered back, stunned but still composed. The actor laughed it off, claiming he was being authentic. But the stunt coordinator and assistant director knew the truth. It was intentional. Dolph's jaw swelled, the shoot halted, and medical staff rushed in. The incident could have ended the film, but instead, Dolph returned the next day, ice pack in hand, jaw still throbbing, and continued working. Not out of ego, but out of professionalism. Yet he made one thing absolutely clear to the producers behind closed doors: "I'm finishing this film, but I'll never work with him again." However, what truly solidified Dolph's hatred wasn't the punch. It was what happened after. During the film's promotional tour, the co-star told a wildly exaggerated version of the incident, claiming Dolph couldn't handle a real fight and that he had accidentally exposed that the action star was not as tough as the movies make him look. It was petty, embarrassing, and blatantly false. Crew members who witnessed the scene were furious, and some even went on record defending Dolph, calling the story a complete lie for Dolph, who had spent years building a reputation based on discipline and respect. This was the ultimate betrayal. Physical injuries healed, professional disagreements could fade, but public humiliation, intentional, dishonest, and aimed at his character, was unforgivable. In later interviews, whenever Dolph was asked whether there was anyone in Hollywood he'd never work with again, he didn't hesitate. He wouldn't name the actor publicly. Dolph has always taken the high road, but those who knew the story understood exactly who he meant. The experience also changed Dolph's approach to choosing future roles. He became more selective, more protective of the working environment around him. If a project seemed tainted by ego, he walked away without hesitation. If a co-star carried a reputation for disrespect, he declined before the script even left his desk. Decades later, Dolph still refuses to utter the actor's name. When pressed about it in a documentary, he simply said, "Some people help you grow. Some teach you what to avoid. He taught me everything I never want to be." And for a man as measured as Dolph Lundgren, that statement is as close as he'll ever come to naming names. By the time Dolph Lundgren hit his late 40s, he was no longer just an action star. He was a filmmaker, a producer, and a mentor to younger actors entering the industry. His image had evolved, but one thing remained constant. He demanded honesty and professionalism from everyone he worked with. And it was during this later phase of his career that he encountered the actor he ultimately said he hated the most, not because of ego, not because of a stunt gone wrong, but because of something far worse: betrayal. The project started out with promise. It was a gritty crime thriller being filmed overseas, starring Dolph as a hardened detective and a much younger actor as his rookie partner. The studio hoped the film would bridge two generations of action stars. Dolph's experience and intensity paired with the newcomer's charisma. At first, the young actor seemed eager, respectful, and enthusiastic about working with a legend. He told everyone how honored he was to share the screen with Dolph, and how much he had admired his work since childhood. Dolph appreciated the humility. He even offered to help the young star with fight choreography, pacing, and long-take action sequences techniques he'd mastered over decades. But as production moved forward, something shifted. The young actor became paranoid about screen time, constantly asking the director for more close-up shots and rewriting lines to give himself stronger moments. Crew members whispered that he had started reading online forums where fans speculated he might overshadow the older star. This insecurity quickly turned into hostility. Dolph noticed the change but stayed focused on the work. He had seen young stars lose control before Hollywood could twist even the most grounded people. However, what Dolph didn't know was that the actor had taken things to a deeply unprofessional level behind the scenes. About halfway through filming, tabloid reporters suddenly began asking Dolph's publicist unusual questions. Rumors that Dolph was difficult on set, that he refused to rehearse, that he insulted the younger actor, that he demanded script changes. None of it was true. Dolph had worked too long and too hard to ever sabotage a project. Then the situation exploded. One morning, a sensational headline hit entertainment websites. Source: Dolph Lundgren too old for action co-star. RS frustrated with on-set meltdowns. Dolph was stunned. The studio was furious. The director knew at once that something was off. There had been no meltdowns, no tension from Dolph, no conflict, at least not from his side. Days later, a production assistant finally revealed the truth. The young actor had been leaking stories to the press, presenting himself as the calm, heroic professional who had to endure a fading action star. It was a calculated move to elevate his own image at the expense of Dolph's reputation. For Dolph, who valued loyalty above all else, this was the final straw. In a private meeting, he confronted the actor directly. The young star tried to deny it, but the evidence was overwhelming: screenshots, messages, and even voice memos handed over by crew members who were disgusted by what they had seen. Dolph didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't retaliate. He simply stood up, looked the young actor in the eye, and said, "You'll go far in this business, but not because of talent, because you're not afraid to destroy people on the way up. That's a price I'll never pay." After that day, Dolph finished the film like a true professional, never speaking poorly of his co-star in public, even as the rumors continued swirling. The director and producers later corrected the misinformation, and fans ultimately ignored the tabloid noise. Dolph's reputation remained intact, stronger, even because of how gracefully he handled the situation. The young actor, his career fizzled shortly after. Hollywood has a long memory, and word spreads fast when someone betrays their own castmates. Years later, when asked in an interview whether he had ever truly hated anyone in Hollywood, Dolph paused, exhaled slowly, and replied, "Yes, once, and not because of ego. Because he smiled to my face and stabbed me in the back." Among all the conflicts, feuds, and clashing personalities Dolph encountered, this was the only one that left a lasting scar, and the only actor he openly admitted he would never forgive.